The Clone Wars ended with a total victory for the Republic turned Empire, as the Grand Army of the Republic utterly crushed the Confederacy of Independent Systems following 3 grueling years of back and forth conflict. However, it did so in spite of a variety of massive internal organizational problems. Doubtlessly, the clones were incredibly effective soldiers, the Jedi were a force to be reckoned with on the battlefield, and the officers the Republic recruited for the conflict were tactically gifted. But none of them worked well together. The Jedi were a really poor fit for the Grand Army of the Republic, and in this video, we'll be looking into why.
Attention, Sergeant on deck!
The Jedi Knights were keepers of the peace, not soldiers, as many a Jedi was sure to point out before turning around and basically acting as a soldier. They knew how to fight, of course, and they were admittedly quite good at it, but that's not really relevant to the role they were given in the Grand Army of the Republic, namely the role of General. The way that Jedi fought generally wasn't applicable to large-scale battles, at least not the kind fought during the Clone Wars, never mind to a full-scale war. The Jedi were no strangers to war, nor indeed were they strangers to serving as generals. The Jedi had wars of their own, most notably the First Great Schism and the 100-Year Darkness, thousands of years before the Clone Wars, and they had fought on behalf of the Republic in all of its various conflicts with the Sith. In fact, the rank of Jedi General actually predated the Clone Wars by about 4,000 years. It first saw use during the Mandalorian Wars, when Jedi led by Revan and Malak took command of the Republic military and led it to victory. But those wars were ancient by the time of the Clone Wars, and by Geonosis, the Order was badly out of practice. It didn't help matters that the last large-scale conflict the Jedi Order fought in before the Clone Wars was the New Sith Wars, which were different from the Clone Wars in every conceivable way. The last of those wars, the War of Light and Darkness, was fought between large armies of Jedi and large armies of Sith, with small units of Republic soldiers and troops loyal to the Brotherhood of Darkness fighting in smaller skirmishes off to the sides. In those days, the Jedi's Army of Light was led by Lord Hoth, a cunning strategist who rewrote Jedi battle tactics to account for this new kind of warfare. Hoth and his followers met Scare Khan and the Sith with large-scale assaults that allowed Jedi Knights to make full use of their power and skill, and this approach was part of the eventual Jedi victory. Centuries later, when the Jedi went to war once more in Geonosis, their standard tactics were the same the Order had used in the New Sith Wars. They arrogantly saw the perceived destruction of the Sith as the end of history and believed they would never have to fight a war on such a scale again. As a result, when the Battle of Geonosis broke out, they defaulted to Hoth's tactics, and honestly, it's a miracle that they won the battle despite this massive error. Jedi tactics on Geonosis worked well enough for the Jedi, at least in the main battle, as they allowed them to make the most of their abilities like Hoth intended them to, but they worked well for effectively nobody else. To put it simply, clones weren't Jedi, and battle droids weren't Sith. While Jedi tactics relied on bringing the strengths of each individual Jedi to bear, clones were trained to fight as a collective, with each trooper seeing themselves as a piece of a whole person. Furthermore, they were obviously much more effective at range than in close quarters, as their blasters were quite powerful and effective at extraordinary ranges, and all clones were skilled marksmen fighting with the aid of sophisticated targeting computers. Their strengths could not have been more diametrically opposed to those of the Jedi. Leading a force of clone troopers as one would lead a force of Jedi was an insane idea, and yet the Jedi did it anyway. Clones at the first Battle of Geonosis were made to charge across open plains straight toward the enemy with no cover. Their ability to fight in teams was ignored by their generals at best, and tactically restricted at worst, and clones were forced to forsake cover and the advantage they had fighting at range to make things easier for a few glowstick wielding space wizards. No wonder so many of them shot their generals without hesitation. Simply by relying on these outdated tactics, the Jedi screwed themselves and the whole Republic at Geonosis. They practically let most of the Separatist fleet escape the planet, plus nearly all of the Confederacy's leadership, and furthermore, they lost far more clones than they should have. Jedi tactics on Geonosis caused countless unnecessary clone deaths by exposing troopers and forcing them to abandon many of their advantages. The This was especially true for the clone commandos, who were used as mere foot soldiers on Geonosis, an egregious tactical error that killed nearly a full half of the entire Special Operations Brigade. Now, if the Jedi made this mistake on Geonosis, realized it was a mistake, and then adapted, that'd be one thing and this video wouldn't exist. But that's not what the Jedi did. Instead, they stuck to their guns, and while the tactical approaches of most Jedi generals changed over the course of the war, they continued to play to their strengths while putting their men at risk. This is simply inexcusable, a display of extraordinary hubris that likely cost untold thousands of lives. As an example of this, let's take a look at the Battle of Anaxis from the most recent season of the Clone Wars. As we mentioned in a prior video, the diversionary assault Kenobi and Windu led on the manufacturing center was appalling for how badly it put clone lives at risk for no good reason. The tactics displayed in this attack ranged from playing to the strengths of the Jedi at the cost of clone lives, such as assuming positions that gave Kenobi and Windu a tactical advantage but left clones exposed, to outright theatrical, like when Windu decided to give a pointless speech he knew would be rebuffed while his men were exposed. This was near the end of the war too, and both of them should have known better. It wasn't just clones that got screwed by bad Jedi tactics either. The officers that the Republic pulled from the judicial forces and the planetary security forces were often at odds with the Jedi as well, for similar reasons. Many of the recruited officers the Republic brought in to serve alongside the Jedi had come from ancient lines of decorated war heroes, and most of them had studied tactics for practically their whole lives. Some of them found it outright offensive how the Jedi ignored these tried and true tactical approaches to strategies that benefited them, and unlike the clones, these officers frequently complained about it. To quote Admiral Wilhoff Tarkin in a memo sent to Supreme Chancellor Palpatine, "Dire circumstances require that I must be blunt. I fear the Jedi Order will lose this war if they are allowed to continue their role as the leadership of the Grand Army of the Republic. These recent weeks have piled debacle upon us, and I cannot sit in silence and still call myself a patriot. I have expressed concerns of this type to you in the past, and you've been generous enough to offer me an attentive ear. So this is not a mere repetition of earlier misgivings. Republic intelligence has concluded its inquiry into the Karida incident, and I'm appalled. The actions of the Jedi Council directly contributed to a dozen ships of the line, complete with their experienced command crews, being jeopardized by separatist sabotage. The Jedi failed to prevent the capture of one of their cruisers, the Renown, and upon interception of encrypted transmissions regarding this plot, dispatched their own mission, separate from and unsanctioned by Republic intelligence, to recover a decryption module. The Jedi Council placed in command of this most crucial operation an inexperienced military tactician and tasked a team of used droids to complete it. Their failure to complete the mission in a timely manner nearly resulted in the loss of all life at the Republic Valor Strategy Conference. Yes, disaster was averted, but is a hair's breadth a comfortable margin in which to risk the outcome of war? Factor in the recent loss of the Negotiator, an entire flagship destroyed while rescuing truant Jedi children in a sector far from the front lines, we are left with an inescapable conclusion. This is not how to run the war. As much as General Grievous is an abomination, at least the enemy sees the value in machine precision when organizing strategy. The Jedi offer no such discipline. They rely too much on wizardry and feelings, such as unbecoming of soldiers. The Jedi have said it often, they do not wish for this role, and I think the time has come to relieve them of it. Tarkin brings up one last point to address as well. The Jedi were unbecoming of soldiers in general. We've gone on plenty in this video about how Jedi tactics were unfit for everyone else, but in fairness, everyone else's tactics would have been unfit for the Jedi. There would be problems if things were the other way around as well, but of course, this is exactly what Darth Sidious knew would happen. It was the reason he put the Jedi in charge of the war in the first place. So that's our look at the terrible mix that was the Jedi Order and the Republic military. But as per usual guys, we want to know your thoughts. Who do you think had the best tactical approach to the Clone Wars? Let us know in the comment section below. And just before you go guys, as per usual, make sure you check out all those links in the description below to join our wider Star Wars community. You can join us on our main Discord, where you can chat with myself and fellow Star Wars fans, our Geetsly's gaming network, which has recently introduced a Jedi vs Sith, so you can play as a Sith to cut down these pesky Jedi scum, and the Patreon if you want to help support the channel. Anyways guys, as always, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.